You see them all the time, right? These massive bridges, huge power plants, and sprawling transit systems that basically define our modern world. But underneath all that concrete and steel, there's this hidden framework, a high-stakes battle against uncertainty. Today we're going to unpack the incredibly complex world of megaproject risk management.
So to really get a handle on the stakes here, we first have to talk about scale. By 2030, the world is expected to invest a mind-blowing $71 trillion in infrastructure. And that's not just some abstract number. It's literally the foundation of our global economy for decades to come. Every single dollar is a bet on the future.
And here's the real kicker. You see, unlike an established company that has years and years of data, these massive projects are often built completely from scratch. In the business, they call them greenfield projects. There's no history, there's no track record. You're building something that has literally never existed before, and that makes every single one a massive calculated gamble.
So, how in the world do you manage a gamble of this size? Well, that's what we're breaking down today. We're going to start in the unique financial arena where these projects are even born. Then, we'll navigate the biggest risks they face, everything from political minefields and unproven tech to the nearly impossible art of forecasting the future, and finally, the all-important human factor.
All right, first up, let's talk about the money. These projects are so huge and carry such unique risks that you can't fund them like a normal business expansion. Nope, they require this very specialized approach called project finance.
What's so wild about project finance is how it completely flips the usual script. Lenders, the banks, they aren't betting on the parent company's fat bank account. They are betting entirely on the project's own ability to make money in the future. To do this, the project is set up as its own little standalone company, often called a special purpose vehicle. And if it fails, well, there's no corporate safety net to catch it. That future cash flow is everything.
This quote right here really nails the core challenge. Even if you're using a proven design, every single new project has its own unique conditions. And that fundamental uncertainty, that we don't know till we flip the switch feeling, is exactly why this whole complex system of risk management isn't just a nice to have. It's the only way these things get financed and built at all.
Okay, so let's say the money is in place. Now the project has to actually survive out in the real world. Just imagine you've designed the most perfect, efficient power plant, but it's in a country where the government could change completely overnight. That, my friends, is political risk, an unpredictable external force that can just blow up a project no matter how well planned it is.
And this stuff can show up in all sorts of nasty ways. You've got the most extreme cases, like a war or a government just straight up seizing your asset. That's called expropriation. But it can also be way more subtle. A new government might suddenly change the tax laws, making your project totally unprofitable. Or they might block you from converting the local money you're earning back into dollars or euros to pay back your loans. Any one of these is a potential project killer.
So how do you fight back against that? Well, you use a very specific set of tools. To protect against a government takeover, a project might get financing from a big player like the World Bank. Why? Because a host government is way less likely to seize an asset if it means defaulting on a loan to a powerful global institution. For currency risks, you can buy a specialized political risk insurance. And to guard against changing laws, every single detail gets locked down in these ironclad contracts called concession agreements.
Okay, you've somehow navigated the political landscape. Now you actually have to build the thing and, make sure the technology works. And this isn't just about whether a turbine will spin. It's about whether it's going to perform efficiently and reliably for decades.
Right, so here's the bottom line. A technical failure is a financial failure. It's that simple. If a new power plant is even just 5% less efficient than what was promised in the engineering reports, that could completely wipe out the profit margin and make it impossible to repay the loans. The technology has to perform exactly as it's spelled out in the financial models.
The defense against this is a three-layered strategy. First, project owners use something called an EPC contract. That stands for Engineering, Procurement, and Construction, and it basically forces the builder to deliver a fully working facility on time and on budget, or they pay the price. Second, you get rock-solid performance guarantees from the companies that make the equipment. And third, you never, ever take anyone's word for it. You hire independent engineers to verify every single calculation and test every piece of equipment before the final check is written.
So, with political and technical risks under control, another huge challenge pops up. For projects that serve the public, think toll roads, airports, things like that, you face the most unpredictable variable of all: us. People. Human behavior.
Success depends entirely on correctly predicting how many people will use your service, sometimes 20 or 30 years from now.
And I mean, the stakes here are just incredibly high. History is just littered with the wreckage of privately financed toll roads from Australia to the US that went bankrupt. And why? Because the traffic studies they were built on were wildly optimistic. The millions of cars they projected just never showed up. The revenue collapsed and the whole project went down.
So how do they even try to make a forecast like that? Well, it's a super complex process, but it basically boils down to these 4 steps. Analysts model how the population will grow. Then they estimate how many trips those people will make. They predict where all those people will be going. And finally, this is the hardest part, they figure out what percentage will actually choose their new toll road over an old free route. A tiny error in step 1 can become a colossal failure by step 4.
This quote from an expert in financial modeling really gets to the heart of it. You can have the fanciest, most complicated spreadsheet in the world, but it's totally useless if your basic assumptions about economic growth or fuel prices or population trends are just plain wrong. The model is only as good as what you feed it.
Over time, this has led to some pretty recognizable patterns of failure. There's what you might call the historical novel approach, where the study tells this really compelling, exciting story that just isn't grounded in reality. And then there's the classic if you build it, they will come fallacy. This belief that if a project is technically cool enough, the economic justification will just magically appear later. In project finance, it never does.
We've talked politics, technology, and economics, but there is one last category of risk that is just as critical: the people. Because sometimes the success of a multi-billion-dollar project can literally hinge on one single person.
I mean, think about it. What if the entire project only exists because one entrepreneur had the unique government connections to get the deal signed? Or what if one single engineer has a revolutionary new technical solution that's not patented? If that person leaves, gets sick, or worse, the entire project could be in serious jeopardy. That is key person risk.
And, just like all the other risks we've talked about, this one has a specific financial tool designed to neutralize it. Key person insurance is basically a life insurance policy that the project takes out on its most critical members. Now, it can't replace their unique skills, obviously, but the financial payout gives the project a buffer. It buys them time and money to find a replacement and get back on track without collapsing.
So as we wrap this up, it's pretty clear that building the world's infrastructure is really an exercise in mastering risk. The whole philosophy of project finance isn't about finding projects with zero risk, because those don't exist. Instead, it's a masterclass in identifying every possible thing that could go wrong and then using contracts, insurance, and guarantees to pass each of those risks to the party that is best equipped to handle it.
And that kind of leaves us with one final big question. We've built these incredible tools to manage all the risks we can think of. But as our world faces brand new challenges, climate change, pandemics, rapid geopolitical shifts, are our current frameworks really prepared for the risks we can't even imagine yet? Thanks for joining us.